Alright guys, let's talk about the global chip war today because make no mistake, it's ramping up again. Now by now we know the game. The West wants to set back China's tech progress. They don't want Beijing to have access or to make the most advanced chips. And that's why Trump was punishing Nvidia selling chips to China. And that's why we have all these restrictions on advanced chip makers to the Chinese economy. China has a grand plan that other countries just can't do. They want to create an entire semiconductor supply chain domestically, from the design to lithography machines to fabrication, all the way to packaging. All key segments will be handled by Chinese companies on Chinese soil. They are setting up the chessboard and pulling it off is just a matter of time. The cost of production there is low, the government has a ton of money, there's brain power, and all the inputs they are within arm's length. And that's why the US administration is freaking out over the rare earth controls. It drives costs up for all their chip plants in the Arizona desert, and it allows the Chinese to pull ahead of the competition. But it's not just the US that is afraid of China's progress. Now, EU countries, they are trying to ring fence industries. But what the Dutch just did is unthinkable, and there will likely be retaliation coming. The Netherlands have seized control of China's Nexperia, which is a large chip maker. The Dutch have used an emergency law during the Cold War era to justify the seizure. Now, the official reasoning was governance shortcomings. They basically want the EU to be in control of not just the production, but the expertise plus technology. I think we can all agree that this is a very risky move, especially during this trade war mess. China is already about to restrict rare earth supply, and one can imagine Beijing throttling supplies to the Dutch. Then we could see companies like ASML take a supply chain hit. Rare earth elements like neodymium are needed for precision motion control and all the optical systems. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this was done under the duress of US orders, which shouldn't be a surprise at this point. Even during the Biden administration, Washington has been arm twisting global chip makers. ASML, Tokyo Electron, all the big suppliers of chip making equipment are restricted. They can't sell their most advanced gear to the Chinese market, which is the biggest in the world, and that's how messy things have become. But is the seizure really such a smart move? They are definitely poking the dragon or the panda. We can be sure Chinese companies will avoid the Netherlands like the plague now. Nexperia can make over 500 million chips a year, so there is leverage in the seizure. But China's supply chains won't be happy. Nexperia produces chips in the Netherlands to access advanced technology from the ecosystem, but 80% of the products are sent to facilities in China. They get sent to Chinese factories for packaging and testing before eventually being delivered to customers. And this sets up a really critical choke point in the supply chain. If the chips can't be exported back to China, it would outreach Beijing for sure. Now, China can't depend on its own factories in the Netherlands. The most direct retaliation China can take is to pull the rare earths card. Now, if a company's product value is 0.1% of Chinese rare earths, then they need a license, which means China can direct a country not to sell their products to the US, for example. And if they do, then rare earth supply might very well stop. Now, ASML says that they are well prepared for the curbs, they have long lead times and a stockpile of rare earths on hand. But even if that is true, future shipments will cost a lot. We can bet Beijing will monitor any transshipments as well. Trying to use proxies to get the rare earths will be very difficult, and all this will jack up the cost of production for ASML, plus potential production delays. The problem isn't rare earth production. China has 70% of global production, and that's an enormous amount for sure, but it's not yet complete domination. But what China does dominate is the refining of the rare earths. Over 90% is based in China. No country can replicate this, especially Europe. With all their environmental regulations and economic crisis, good luck trying to build a rare earths refining plant. And because Russia relations are also broken, they are fractured, building in the Far East is also impossible as well. Because of this, EU dependence on China is off the charts. 100% of heavy rare earth elements are imported from China. 85% of light rare earths are Chinese as well. Going down the list of semiconductor inputs, it's obvious what card China could play. Gallium, lithium, and germanium, the majority are all from Chinese supplies as well. That's why the seizure of Nexperia just doesn't make sense. Now, sure, you might get to control a chip maker, but you risk the wrath of Chinese supply chains. High risk, low reward. What's really the point here? And speaking of things that don't make sense, we have to talk about Bessent's bailout of Argentina. We can understand how this move is more of a geopolitical concern than really an economic one. Giving a $20 billion bailout is not a sound strategy. Buying up Argentine pesos because it is undervalued is not the real agenda. Bessent makes it very clear here.
He is also a great ally for the U.S. He'll be coming to the Oval Office next Tuesday, and he is committed to getting China out of Argentina. They're all over the place in Latin America.
Once again, it's the obsession against China. The US wants to consolidate the Western Hemisphere. Let's remember how important Argentina is for the US, especially during this rare earth crisis. The US cannot afford for China to deepen their foothold in Argentina, and that's why Bessent is blowing $20 billion on this wild rescue for Malay's government. Argentina holds the world's second largest lithium reserves at over 90 million tons. They sit at the center of the lithium triangle, where 70% of the world's lithium reserves lie. And these are the inputs needed for both chips and EV production. Even today, Argentina is the fourth largest producer of lithium. You can imagine the mad scramble from Washington, especially when Chinese rare earths are about to be throttled. Losing South American lithium supply will be unthinkable. US supply chains will forever be broken. But did Bessent really make a good financial decision here? He might be throwing money into a black hole. The treasury swap line with Argentina will probably never get paid back. Milei will need to pay off the IMF first and still import stuff from the world. So all their dollar liquidity is extremely limited. Plus, there's interest costs on top of it as well. In addition to the swap line, Bessent also bought pesos in the open market. Now, he sold dollars to prop up the Argentine currency. But even Argentinians themselves, they aren't really convinced. They are dumping the peso, betting that Bessent's dollar rescue is doomed to fail. He called the peso undervalued, but even the locals know it is still very overvalued. Even after the bailout, the peso fell by over 2% after the Trump-Milei meeting. Now, I don't know how great a forex trader Bessent is, but the losses on the Treasury's book, they are going to pile up. And the Treasury's money is, in effect, taxpayer money. And here's a big reason why the peso is recollapsing again. There won't be enough economic activity because the peso has not accounted for Argentina's elevated inflation rate. If you're a business owner in Argentina, you want more pesos because your costs are escalating, but the official exchange rate is set too low. If you sell your goods today, the peso could devalue tomorrow and your margins are literally destroyed. And that's why the peso is plunging. It's correcting back to reality. How long can Scott Bessent keep this up before the US Treasury itself cracks? And that's the big question. This intervention is not working. But let's take a detour to North America. It's now official, guys. China is replacing US energy supply with Canadian oil. It's really wild because the squeeze is not just on US farmers, but on the US energy complex as well. More than 70% of oil vessels leaving British Columbia are sailing for China. Now, China bought 5 million barrels of crude from Canada in October. During the same period, Canadian volumes to the US have dropped as well. China is diversifying their supply, but at the same time, the US is being denied cheap crude from up north, and it's anywhere from a 5 to 15% discount gone. Definitely not good for US industries. Canada is starting to think ahead. Instead of subsidizing Trump's trade war against you, might as well supply China and Asia. You'll earn more revenue and not be at the mercy of Trump. It was bound to happen. However, there's another storm colliding with Canada supplying China with more crude oil, and that is China's retaliation on US ships. They are hitting back against the US and this time on the high seas. US ships or ships flying the US flag will face a whopping levy docking at Chinese ports, and this can reach millions or tens of millions of dollars if the shipment is big enough. The problem here is the cascading effect. It isn't just US goods to Beijing getting clobbered. Now shipping US crude oil overseas is more expensive. You are now stacking more costs on top of an already expensive product. And this is the problem with Trump's trade war. He has unleashed Pandora's box, and China's retaliation is carefully thought out. Guys, there are multiple layers to this. When they impose a sanction or punishment, there is definitely a deeper agenda. The cost of shipping US crude from the Gulf Coast to Asia has shot up. It's 15% higher from a week earlier. Now, Trump wants to export US energy to the world. He has told us this multiple times, but it's no longer economically viable. The only buyers will be those forced to buy, like the Europeans. Those in a free market can have a ton of options. They can buy from the Saudis or the Russians, and the world is not short of oil. As a result, US oil revenue is getting crushed. The premium is starting to drop, which is a serious problem. It's a reflection that US crude demand is beginning to fall. The cost of US oil production is very high. Now, on the higher end, we are talking about $50, $60, or even $70 per barrel. And this could trigger many expensive oil wells to just close down. US oil, they are facing a double squeeze. Canadian crude is taking over American customers in Asia. China is not going to stop buying from the Canadians as well. Chinese levies, on the other hand, they're going to make US shipping a nightmare. If China goes around buying stakes in more global ports, it will simply be the game of monopoly on the high seas. You land on our port, please pay us some money. And once again, this move is rattling Scott Bessent to the core. He knows that this battle is about to get nastier by the minute.
There was a lower level trade person who was slightly unhinged here and threatening, saying that China would unleash chaos on the global system if the U.S. went ahead with our docking fees for Chinese ships. And this is clearly something that they were planning all along.
So we have to hang tight, guys. We are just in the first inning of this second chapter. China is striking back. They have had enough and they are flexing their advantage in the real world. The US has weaponized the dollar and their consumer markets fair enough. So now China is using their supply chains and their industries to put on the squeeze. So this ride is going to be a wild one. But as always, let me know what you think. Was seizing China's chipmaker a good idea? And can US oil exports really recover from this one? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through this economic apocalypse.